My name is Joe B. Marshall. I'm from Eskasoni. And I just want to remind people, if anyone doesn't understand, it's never been mentioned yet, what's being talked about in English, we can try to translate for you into Mi'kmaq. What Viola has gone over is quite a bit of history. The way that Mi'kmaq have involved themselves in that history in Nova Scotia has been by organizing themselves back in 1969 into Union of Nova Scotia Indians. And once that organization was put together, it was decided by the chiefs at the time, who were the board of directors of the Union, to begin researching our rights that everybody was talking. They decided that we should do something about those rights. So once the research began and went on for 4 or 5 years, a position paper was developed. And the union had organized itself on monies from the federal government that were given out by the federal government to Indian organizations in the country, in all the provinces, so that the Indian organizations would sell the government's white paper of 1969 to everybody in their communities, so that everybody would understand. We didn't do that with the money that we got in the Union of Nova Scotia Indians. We used it instead to organize the union and to begin the research on our rights and claims. And in 1977, it says here in 1976, but that's probably when it began to be written, a position paper on Aboriginal rights and title was presented to the federal government. The Minister of Indian Affairs at the time was Warren Almond. And it took the government a year to send a reply to that position paper. And what they said in their reply was, as it's written here, Nova Scotia claims to Aboriginal rights and title were superseded by law. It took a number of years to find out from government how they could say that. And what they had done was they had taken a decision from British Columbia that had been decided by the Supreme Court of Canada that the Nisga'a in British Columbia didn't have Aboriginal title to their lands. And the reasoning of the judges, 4 out of 7, 3 of them had agreed that Nisga'a had Aboriginal title. 4 said no. What they based their decision on was the idea that as Canada was developing, as the provinces were organizing themselves into provincial governments and making and passing laws like the federal government, then those laws that they made extinguished any Aboriginal rights or title in Canada. That was it. They even had a court decision to back them up. But some wise judge somewhere in another court case said to Canada, if it doesn't say specifically in a Canadian law, in a federal law, or a provincial law, that Aboriginal rights and title are being extinguished by whatever the subject is that's being covered by that law, then Aboriginal rights and title are not extinguished. So what it took almost 10 years for us to get out of the government finally was out in the open. And the federal government was being laughed at by every legal person in Canada for the kind of assumption they were making from that court case known as Calder, the Calder case in British Columbia. There were many other things that the Union did in the ensuing years to try to develop recognition of Mi'kmaq rights and title. And I guess one of the paths that was taken was to show both Canada and the province of Nova Scotia that the treaties signed by the British with the Mi'kmaq were still valid and still alive. And it wasn't until 1985 that a case from Nova Scotia called Simon reached the Supreme Court of Canada. And that Supreme Court validated the Treaty of 1752